What are the 5 big questions that Episode 8 and its sequels need to address on the back of The Force Awakens? Well, I'm Dan Dawkins for Games Radar Plus, and I'm joined today by Richard Edwards, editor of SFX, and by Jordan Farley, community editor of SFX. We'll get straight in there. The big question, is Rey Luke's daughter?
Ooh, that is a big one. There's kind of definitely hints there. She's obviously Force sensitive. There's a sort of hint at the end of the movie that they know each other, and you also get a feeling that Leia and Luke know each other. But at the same time, if she's Luke's daughter, who was the mother?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question that really needs answering. I mean, I do think she probably is Luke's daughter. That look of recognition at the end definitely implies that. And she's obviously got this Force-sensitive bloodline from somewhere. My other theory, watching the film, I got a real vibe that Ren and Rey were related, although I don't think that's the case, having thought about it more. But there definitely was a sibling kind of vibe from them, I thought.
But Han didn't seem to know it. That was the thing that made me think that she wasn't Han and Leia's kid.
Unless somehow Leia's kept it secret from Han for whatever reason, but I doubt that's the case.
Implying there's a different father, or, it's...
Yeah, maybe. Or I don't know. I mean, maybe Luke, the fact is Luke, maybe he's breaking Jedi rules. I mean, obviously he's sort of grown up a little bit later, and he might think it's okay to have kids and continue the bloodline.
Yeah, I think that could well be the case, but then you do have to get into where the mother is and why the mother isn't around anymore.
And I think the important thing with Rey is that there's obviously something very important about that someone would leave her on this planet. I mean, Jakku is somewhere where you would hide somebody. She's obviously been put there for her own protection or the protection of somebody else. So... or someone knew she was important.
So, forced to guess, do we still lean most probably that Luke is her father, given that, again, she seems to be the stronger, even given Kylo Ren's had training, it seems like her natural Force inclination is greater?
It did, didn't it? I mean, it's as you say, no training, and she was basically beating him. I think it would be a bit weird if she'd just come from nowhere. And given that the whole theme of the Star Wars movies has been, it's about the Skywalkers, really. The Skywalkers are the family who are basically control the destiny of the galaxy. I think it would be weird to take this character who is clearly incredibly powerful, got a lot about her, and not have her related to a character you know already, unless she's like Rey Palpatine.
Yeah, or related to Snoke.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us neatly on to Snoke. Now, who do we think Supreme Leader Snoke really is?
Well, he's powerful in the Force, the dark side of the Force. I don't think he's a Sith Lord. I think they've said that. But apart from that, there's very little clues about who he is, even where he is. He's in some holographic form for the entirety of the film, so we don't have a clue where he is, or even if he's supposed to be that big. Like, he's colossally huge.
Do you think he's 12 foot tall?
I was wondering if he was actually Yoda sized, but he just had a camera down by his feet to make people intimidated.
He just got size issues, and he goes, I want my hologram to be 50 foot tall.
Yeah. So who said he's not a Sith Lord?
I'm not sure. I just get the vibe that he isn't.
Because I wondered if he might be, just because the whole thing with Palpatine was that no one knew that he was a Sith Lord.
Yeah.
He's obviously very powerful. He obviously feels the Force. He's been training Kylo Ren. I mean, he's powerful enough to take somebody who's been trained by Luke Skywalker, very strong in the Force, and tempt him away. And it's sort of almost, it's like brainwashing. The way that Ren goes on about how I must not succumb to the light. I know it's there, and I must not succumb to it, which is a really nice twist on Luke Skywalker in the original trilogy.
It all fits that kind of rule of two as well, where you've got like an apprentice and a master. So, I mean, that would make perfect sense. I think it's worth introducing here. There's a really popular fan theory bubbling up that if you listen to the music that plays during Revenge of the Sith, when Palpatine explains to Anakin about the legend of Darth Plagueis, who is described as a wise man versed in the ways of the Sith, who can bring people back to life. And there's this kind of gloomy orchestral soundtrack that plays. Now, people are saying, and it's very difficult to make the comparison because obviously I've only got my mental memory of what the music was, that the soundtracks are essentially the same. Now, like, if it was to be Darth Plagueis, what do we think that could mean?
Well, I think it would be brilliant. It'd be a really nice way of tying together this new trilogy with the prequel trilogy. And, Darth Plagueis was he was the guy who trained Darth Sidious. Darth Sidious, killed him in inverted commas. Thought he was dead. So the idea that he's sort of come back and he's even more extreme than Palpatine, because, we see the way that the First Order behaves. They're worse than the Empire. So yeah, I think would be a really nice thing to tie it back, and it also says that they still care about the prequels. And I know where the prequels are much derided, but they are still part of the story, and that is part of Star Wars history, and it's sort of tying all the way back, which I think is actually a very good idea if it is true.
Yeah, I agree. I think it ties in the canon really neatly, and I think what it would throw up is a wonderful dynamic where, let's say at some stage we expect Luke to come into confrontation with Snoke. It might not be beyond the realms that Snoke would tempt him with the ability to bring people back to life. Knowing what we know and what we're about to talk about with Han Solo, that would be tempting. And again, if we presume that Luke did get married or have a child, what happened to his wife or his partner? Could it be that he'd be tempted to bring her back? Again, this is all speculation, but it would create an interesting subplot that would make Luke's journey much murkier.
Yeah, I guess he'd have to find Han's body though first, and I don't know where he's going to find that, given that the planet's blown up.
Though someone found Luke's old lightsaber after that fell into the clouds of Bespin.
Yeah.
So,
anything's possible.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, what do we think would have enticed Kylo Ren over to the dark side, or what would the failure been in the training he'd received?
Well, it's difficult to say because we don't know the history of what happened when Ren and the Knights of Ren turn on Luke's school. But I guess we see it constantly, especially in the prequels. The way that Anakin is turned to the dark side is mainly through like rhetoric and things like that, and it's all just being tempted with the power and things like that. So I don't know if it's necessarily an event that happens, or if it's just the lure of this unstoppable force that he can gain.
Also, though, Anakin wasn't just about the power. I mean, Anakin thinks he's doing the right thing. I mean, part of it is to save Padme, but there's also there is this ideological thing, and that he thinks that holding together the galaxy is a good thing. So it could be someone who talks very well, or there may have just been this something where he felt he was saving somebody or avoiding something, that just where he thought, oh, this is the right thing, and then it turns out that the dark side is the way to go.
Do we think that, like, Han and Leia clearly aren't together? The film kind of intimates that the things that happen with Ben Solo are what drove them apart. But what if they were already basically separated or divorced? And essentially we've got a really high-stakes divorce tale at play, where instead of locking himself in his bedroom and, retreating to the solace of a grandparent, which would be quite a common response to a divorce situation, he's, sought solace in Darth Vader. And then, because he's essentially just so upset about the breakup of his family.
Well, it is hinted that Han was often off. I mean, I can't imagine Han just sort of, hanging around, living a sort of 9 till 5 existence.
Yeah.
He would have been smuggling things. So, maybe there was resentment there. And, I think that's actually a very plausible argument, especially if you've got someone like Snoke, who's almost like, I knew your grandfather.
Yeah. Just taking advantage of him.
Yeah.
I guess there's also a question of where the Knights of Ren come into this. Like, are they something that happened before Snoke gets his hands around Ren, or is that something that happens after? Like, does Kylo Ren form the Knights of Ren when he's turned to the dark side? Or, I mean, how does this all fit in?
I mean, it feels almost like a little Sith fan club, doesn't it?
It does
some guys
bit,
who really want to run around with red lightsabers and.
And where are the rest of the knights come The Force Awakens? Like, we see them briefly in that flashback where they're slaughtering the pupils at Luke's school, but that's pretty much it, and we don't see any of them again.
Yeah, I guess that's going to be something that's key and is going to sort of emerge, and maybe we are going to see more of them come into play.
Now, this hit me as if I myself was being stabbed with a broadsword. Han Solo, is he dead? I mean, it seems pretty likely. And like, how might they explore the Solo character further, or could they bring him back?
I actually hope he is properly dead.
Yeah, so do I.
I mean, I think we've seen in so many things, like from Doctor Who to Marvel Comics, that death doesn't mean anything, and it kind of devalues it. And Han Solo is such an important character. Killing him as they did, the way they did, and the way that he was kind of betrayed by Kylo Ren, and Han Solo was so brave in that scene. It's not the sort of all guns blazing, but to go onto that bridge to get his son for him, for Leia and everything, that was such a noble thing to do, and he must have known that there was a pretty good chance he was going to die.
I think he probably went out on that bridge knowing he was going to die.
Yeah,
almost certainly.
It's utterly tragic, and to sort of then have him sort of popping up as this sort of wry ghost, sort of chatting with Rey or Luke or something, actually just devalues that moment.
It felt to me almost like he was doing it, and he knew it was futile, but he was doing it for Leia, because that was the one thing she specifically had asked him. And he probably out of regret or whatever it was for the situation that had transpired between them, it felt like his last act to build the bridge to Leia almost. Like, and it just felt like such a willing sacrifice or risk to go down that path.
Because you see that bit outside Maz Kanata's castle where he sees Ren and he doesn't make any attempt to try and contact him or get in touch with him or anything. But it's like in this moment he decides he's going to do it after he's spoken to Leia and after Leia's implored him to bring their son home.
But I don't think it was just about Leia.
I know it wasn't just about that.
I mean, he knew he had to try. I think he knew that he couldn't have just left it. And I think that moment just before he falls off the bridge, where the hand goes onto to Ren's face and it's tender. It's sort of like, yeah, you've just killed me, but you're my boy.
And there's like a lovely moment of hesitation before it goes out on the bridge as well, where he's just kind of stood behind a pillar, and you can almost see him thinking about whether this is the right thing to do, and he's almost willing himself to do it. Like he's not jumping to do it; like he has to push himself a little bit.
And I thought this was one of the very clever things about how they did Kylo Ren, in that, you know, you've got him in the mask walking around, and he's like this really almost Darth Vader-ish figure. You know, he's
very
powerful,
menacing, isn't he?
menacing.
Yeah.
You know, he does these temper tantrums, but he's still very menacing. But they take the mask off, and he's suddenly humanized, almost sort of turned into a kid. You know, he's got this very almost boyish sort of face, and he suddenly sort of regresses and becomes a lot more vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I think that was a genius thing. And just having him with you sort of still have this little doubt: could he be turned? But then obviously he does kill Han, and the fact that it is this kind of almost boy who does it makes it all the more powerful.
And and he does almost pre-shadow it with saying, I know I will be tested. I feel the temptation of the light, and that felt like he knew that was his moment of temptation, and like almost felt obliged to have to kill his father. Like that was his rite of passage. Really, and you know, talking about it now, I feel a bit like crying. Like,
in the cinema, I was weeping. I was like, this is my all-time screen hero, and it's like, oh my god.
Yeah, well, I mean, the moment that really got me, because the moment where Han gets killed, I kind of braced myself for it when I saw the bridge. I was like, this is the moment where he's going to die. But the moment that really got me was after the fight between Rey and Ren, where the Millennium Falcon turns up to rescue them, and you just see Chewie in the Falcon's cockpit, like alone, and it just suddenly hit me in a wave. Like,
it's just the way he's carrying himself.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it was so tragic.
I thought Chewie's reaction was great. I mean, there's the rage when it's just happened, and it's like, I'll blow all this up and shoot. You know, that shot he gets off onto Ren, and
I love that he landed.
There's a proper sort of yes moment. Yeah, go Chewie. But then just the sort of way Chewie carries himself afterwards.
I know, and I don't want to turn this into like a Han Solo recovery clinic. I feel like that could be a set of separate podcasts where we all sit here taking it in turns to hold a Han toy and cuddle him. Finally now, this is a big question. Where do we think Episode 8 goes next? What do we think the broad themes will be in the key players?
Well, I mean, one of my slight problems with The Force Awakens was the fact that it felt like almost a beat-for-beat remake of A New Hope. Like, it followed a lot of very similar plot beats. So what I kind of want from Episode 8 is for it to do something very different, and for the themes and for just the events in general just to follow a very different trajectory. But broadly speaking, I would quite like it if Episode 8 was more about Luke. Like, because
it can't be less about Luke.
I mean,
no man has walked so much red carpet for so little screen time since Marlon Brando, right?
Second on the billing for what, a minute's screen time? I mean, that's incredible.
He's got a good gig. I mean, tough lines he had to learn as well, right? So, well done, Luke.
But, I mean, I did love that moment, though. I was very surprised because I was expecting, because Mark Hamill looks so different now, I was expecting to just go, oh, that's Mark Hamill on the screen. But the moment he takes that hood off, I was like, it's Luke Skywalker. It's the first time I've seen Luke Skywalker in 30 years.
He looks awesome. So what we were saying essentially, we think it's going to be a Luke-led tale. I'm guessing in a similar way to, this is kind of a Han Solo story, The Force Awakens. Like, will this be a Luke-led tale that delves into the backstory of, you know, whatever we think it is?
I think it's going to be more Rey-led. I think she's going to be the key, but I think Luke is going to be the guide on this, whereas she obviously learnt a lot from being with Han Solo in this film, and there was that sort of practical side of it. This is going to be awakening the sort of spiritual, forcey side. And I think we're going to find out a bit why Luke's gone into hiding, because I think that he must have gone not because he's like fearing for his life. I think he's fearing that if he's out there is a danger for everybody else. So I think we'll find out a bit about that, and I think probably there'll be some training for Rey.
Yeah, Yoda-style sequences I'm expecting.
And also I think there's going to be got to be something about how the relationship between the Republic and the Resistance, because I found it odd that the First Order is this huge threat, and yet they've just got this Resistance dealing with it, and the Republic are almost like, this Resistance, we're not really connected to them. There's a reference, I think, that one of the First Order makes. Oh yeah, we know that they're kind of joined up, even they pretend they're not. So
yeah, I think there's probably just a hesitance to declare all-out war between the First Order and the New Republic.
Well, we could definitely talk, and we will, no doubt, in future videos. So please do like and subscribe to hear more of this great Star Wars chat. But for today, thank you for listening. Please let us know your thoughts on where you think the plot will develop, and like what you'd like us to talk about next, because there's so many rich seams of conversation around The Force Awakens, and I just feel like it's opened the door to an unexplored new Star Wars universe, and it's really thrilling, and it's not going to end in a confrontation between Anakin and Obi-Wan on a boiling hot planet.
Or will it?
Wow. Shock twist, it does. So yeah, thanks for listening. I'll catch you again soon. Bye.